Yeah.
That's the kind of the summary, and then he'll go through his whole staff report. So however many pages this is, 9 pages. He'll go over that, and then he'll say, then we're like, I'm open to like any questions that the commission has, and that's where you start.
Our room is unmuted and we should be live, Maggie.
Great. Okay then, good afternoon, everybody. We are going to call to order this special meeting of the Salina Heritage Commission. Today is June 8th, 2023. Would staff please call roll?
Well, first, we're going to, I guess we've got these reversed on here, but we'll go ahead and call roll. So, Commissioner Martin. Here. Commissioner Gilmore. Commissioner Mike Sell. Commissioner Baffa.
Here.
Commissioner Ivey.
Here.
Commissioner Seibel.
Here.
Chair Gillum.
Here.
So we have a quorum of 5 here to start the meeting. 7 is our membership. We need a minimum of 4 to conduct a meeting. So I'm going to ask Margie or Kelly to confirm that we've met our Kansas Open Meeting Act requirements by posting notice of today's meeting.
I can confirm that the packet was posted and the meeting notice was provided.
So we have a quorum and we provided notice of today's meeting, so that would allow us to conduct today's business, starting with the minutes from your last meeting.
I move we approve.
Second.
Looks like we have a second or a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the April 12th meeting and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Meeting minutes are approved 5-0. So we have one public hearing item today, and that is a certificate of appropriateness application filed by Mr. Charles Renz of JGR Architects on behalf of Kansas Wesleyan University. And the focus of that application is interior renovations to Sam's Chapel. And the primary focus is a proposal to construct a 2-story entrance addition on the south facade of Pioneer Hall. And as I understand it, the chair feels that she would need to recuse herself from this item.
That's correct.
Okay, so we're going to allow the chair to recuse herself from this item, and the remaining 4 of you can review and consider this application. So in terms of the staff report, I want to start staff's report with just a reading of 2 items into the record of our minutes, and that deals with the subject of it being called into question whether this meeting is necessary and whether the Heritage Commission review of this item is necessary. So the first item, on October 12th, 2022, this commission met, and what you did was you had a public hearing to make comments on, to make a recommendation on whether, as a commission, you felt that Pioneer Hall met the criteria to be placed on the Kansas Register of Historic Places and the National Register of Historic Places. And you, as a commission, made a unanimous motion to recommend to the City Commission that Pioneer Hall be found to meet the criteria to be placed on the National Register. At that October 12th meeting, I made the following statement to the Heritage Commission. I stated that should this property be placed on the National and State Registers of Historic places, and there is a project at Pioneer Hall that is put forward. The Heritage Commission would review any additions or physical modifications proposed for this building. So on October 12th, you did not review any plans for construction or additions or modifications. You only registered an opinion on whether this was worthy of historic designation. So you are now, at this meeting, performing that review. So I wanted to clarify that and get it into the minutes. The other portion that deals with that is a letter addressed to Kansas Wesleyan, copied to me as a city staff member, that said that the state of Kansas's approval of the tax credit rehabilitation plan does not serve for the purpose of review under Kansas state preservation law. And so the City of Salina has entered into an agreement with the State Historic Preservation Office, and under that agreement, this local commission gets to perform the review that would normally be done by the State Historic Preservation Office. So this review of the proposed two-story addition is required both by our local ordinance and by the state of Kansas. And the state of Kansas has approved Kansas Wesleyan's rehabilitation plan for tax credit purposes, but they have not approved building permit plans, and that's the purpose of today's meeting, is that you review the plans for the proposed addition, and if you find that they meet our local criteria, then that authorizes staff to issue a permit for constructing the addition. So in terms of our staff report, it's quite lengthy. It's got a lot of attachments. I would refer you, there is after the staff report, there's a item that's labeled as a chronology or timeline of events. And just from the standpoint for the commission's knowledge and understanding, city staff first learned about this project, and we had what we call a development review team meeting on it in August of 2022. And at that time, no one discussed, knew of, or had any knowledge of a plan to try to put Pioneer Hall on a state or national register. So when we met with the architect and with representatives of Kansas Wesleyan, we didn't discuss Heritage Commission review or historic preservation at all, because at the time Pioneer Hall was not on the state or national register, and we had no knowledge that there was any intention to try to do that. So that, when everything was first posed to us, staff could not provide any information about that process because we had no knowledge that that was the plan. So we have provided for your benefit at the back of our staff report a timeline of events from August 3rd, 2022 to the present. So in your packets, you have an application that's been filed, a very helpful project narrative that's been provided by Mr. Renz, the project architect. As we indicated in a report, in September of 2022, staff became aware and received notice from the state that a nomination form had been received to put Pioneer Hall on the state and national registers. We indicated in our report that went to you in October that one of the primary motivations for a property owner to try to get placed on a state or national register is the potential eligibility for rehabilitation tax credits. And so there is a request that's been put forward by Kansas Wesleyan to utilize tax credits for this project. And so in August of 2022, the Salina City Commission renewed our agreement with the state, and that means as a certified local government, you are doing this review on behalf of the State Historic Preservation Office. And with that designation, that means that any physical modifications that would involve construction, alteration, or removal that requires a building permit from the city requires that the Heritage Commission approve a certificate of appropriateness for any actions that affect the exterior architectural appearance of Pioneer Hall. You're also required to perform a state historic preservation law review on their behalf. So that is, you are really filling two roles today, one under our local ordinance and one under the certified local government agreement. So we've kind of summarized for you what the project entails, and we can certainly have the applicant and the project architect expand on that. But our reading of the plans is that this is a three-part project. Part of the project involves renovation of the music department space in the basement of Pioneer Hall, and that involves some interior demolition. It involves new interior walls. It also involves some soundproofing in that area. There's also a plan above that, an interior plan to expand the existing stage in Sam's Chapel and make interior renovations to that space. The plan is to extend the stage out, remove rows of seats, and remove some seats in the middle, but that will result in an overall elimination of seating capacity in Sam's Chapel. And so, as the project's been explained to us, Kansas Wesleyan is proposing to remove and replace all the seats in the lower level of Sam's Chapel as well as the seats in the mezzanine. And then the third aspect of this is construction of a new south entrance addition. Right now, the public access to Sam's Chapel is through the music department or coming in the main hallway on the north side of the building. And the plan for this addition would be to make it 2 stories with a mezzanine that would include a new entryway, stairs, and an elevator with restrooms added to the second level. And this would provide a direct access from the south into Sam's Chapel. To accomplish this, there's a small bump out or non-historic addition on the south side of the building that would be removed and replaced with this new addition. The brick applied to the addition would match as much as possible the existing red brick on the exterior of Pioneer Hall. So that is the project that was put forward. And so the primary concern at the state levels related to the tax credits involved what was identified as some original seats within Sam's Chapel, and the state in their correspondence said that their approval for tax credits did not extend to the complete removal of the original wood and metal seats in Sam's Chapel, and they felt that removal of those seats would not allow them to approve the tax credit application. And so
Dean, just to clarify, doesn't the Heritage Commission only approve the exterior of a building if it's on the register?
no, your job is to protect what's identified as character defining features or historic materials that are part of the building.
But,
So I will give you an example.
okay.
In the Stiefel Theater renovation of by my count, some 20 alterations that were made to the historic Fox Theater to do the Stiefel Theater project, 18 of those renovations were inside the building, and 2 of them dealt with the exterior. And there were things like chandeliers, lighting, concession stand, the stage, a number of things. So when someone applies to have their property placed on the National Register, there is a list of what's described as character defining features. And any project that affects a character-defining feature, whether it's inside or outside the building, is subject to Heritage Commission or State Historic Preservation Office review.
So if I had a house and wanted to gut the kitchen is not a defining architectural aspect of the.
And so we're slowly getting to that, but as we outlined in our timeline in our review, this, for your understanding, this all came in as one big single permit. So what staff did was we broke it out and we said, well, first of all, there's no character-defining features in the music department in the basement because that's all been altered and that wasn't part of the national or state register nomination. So we separated that out, said we can approve that work because it doesn't affect anything. And then we looked at Sam's Chapel, and the only thing that was identified as a character-defining feature was the original seats in the chapel. So once we had the email from Mr. Renz and confirmation from the project contractor that those seats had been identified and were being retained, we then issued a permit to do the interior renovations to Sam's Chapel. That left us with the primary focus that we couldn't approve as a staff, and that is the construction of an exterior addition to the building. So our focus this afternoon, after walking you through those steps, is to say that we've already issued permits for the interior renovations to the music department. We've already issued permits for the interior renovations to Sam's Chapel under our administrative authority. So that leaves us with this hearing today, which is to review the proposed addition for conformance with the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. So our focus this afternoon is to review the design, building materials, and appearance of the proposed south entryway addition. And so that was staff's long way of getting to that point, but we had to explain that this didn't come in as 3 projects or 3 permits. It came in as a single project, as a single permit, and we had to break it apart in pieces to determine this we can approve, this we can approve. The addition, only the Heritage Commission can approve, so that's why we're here today. So your job this afternoon is to look at the design, the building materials, and the appearance of this proposed addition, and to determine whether that addition would damage or destroy any of the character-defining features of historic Pioneer Hall. So as we looked at this, and you have a copy of the Secretary of Interior Standards for Rehabilitation in your packet, but what we should have bolded in our report, but just for the Commission's benefit, character-defining features are those elements that are identified and described in the nomination form approved by the National Park Service, which manages the National Register. So I don't know exact reasons, didn't understand it necessarily at the time, but when the Stiefel Theater was put on the National Register, the interior concession stand that was in that theater was identified as a character-defining feature. And that concession stand could not be modified, destroyed, anything with it without a plan being presented to the Heritage Commission, because that's a character-defining feature. So in this case, as it relates to Pioneer Hall, the exterior of the building and the brick and the current design is the character-defining feature. The fact that it's intact and the historical and architectural integrity is still in place from the original construction. So as we looked at this, 3 things stood out to us that apply. Are they removing any historic materials or altering features or spaces that characterize this as Pioneer Hall? Are there any distinctive features or special examples of craftsmanship that they're not preserving. And then the third thing is, if you're doing a new addition or an alteration or new construction, is that destroying historic materials, and are they doing the new work in a way that, one, differentiates it from the old, but two, will also be compatible with the original design. So Mr. Renz can comment on that further. He was in somewhat of a difficult position where, for tax credit purposes, the state was saying, on the one hand, it's important that this addition be compatible with the original building. On the other hand, you need to design the addition and make it distinctive enough so everyone can tell that it's new and that you're not trying to pretend that it's an extension of the old. And so this addition here is a balance. It's been done in a way and kind of pulled in its width so that you can still see portions of the original south facade above and on the edges, and then it's intended to be designed to utilize not perfectly matching brick, but compatible brick with the existing, so that one, it's compatible, and two, it's distinguishable that it's not part of the original. And so that's a judgment call for you, whether they have achieved that or not. So we have looked at this. We don't think that the addition conflicts with any of the Secretary of Interior's standards. We have been in close contact and consultation with the State Historic Preservation Office. Our goal and their goal and Kansas Wesleyan's goal should be to make sure that when we get to the end of this project that they are in fact eligible for the tax credits that they applied for. And so the only thing that's being lost here is removal of a smaller non-historic addition, and so that addition dates from the 1970s or 80s, so it's non-historic, and so by using similar but not identical brick and design, we feel it would be compatible with the existing structure. So on page 7 of your report, we have provided suggested findings. And the first one is that, from our perspective, the addition affects only a portion of the south facade, and it doesn't modify or negatively affect any identified character-defining features. So if you're looking at Pioneer Hall from Santa Fe and Claflin, you're not going to be able to tell a single difference, because that's the primary character-defining facade, and so this is not altering that. We're not removing any historic materials. We're just removing a non-historic addition. The things that are distinctive, the finishes and construction techniques and examples of craftsmanship that make Pioneer Hall what it is, will still be preserved. One judgment call for you is whether you think that this will damage any of the spatial relationships. In other words, is this addition proportional to the existing construction? And then we believe that the new addition will be differentiated from the original building but still be compatible. And so we think that those findings can be made to support a certificate of appropriateness. So your two actions that you're being asked to do today is, under one option would be to approve a certificate of appropriateness for the proposed building addition, finding that it will conform with the Secretary of Interior standards. You could approve it subject to conditions, you could postpone consideration, or you could deny the certificate of appropriateness application if you find that it would damage or destroy the historic character of Pioneer Hall. So on page 8 of your report, if you agree with our suggested findings and that you want to recommend approval, we've got two attached conditions. One deals with the seating in Sam's Chapel, just to reinforce what the state of Kansas had stated about those original seats. And then the second one is if there's any significant changes to the project as approved, that those changes be presented to staff to see if that needs to come back for any additional Heritage Commission review. If you make that decision, then we would ask for a second motion to see if you agree that Kansas Wesleyan's project will not damage or destroy any character-defining features of Pioneer Hall. So your first action is under our local ordinance. Your second action would be on behalf of the state of Kansas, finding that this project, as it's been presented to you, will not damage or destroy any character-defining features of Pioneer Hall. So those are the two things that you're being asked to do today. Under our local ordinance, the building official cannot issue a building permit for the building addition until and unless the Heritage Commission has approved a certificate of appropriateness. So that is the purpose of today's meeting, and if you view this addition favorably, then that would allow the building official to issue a building permit for the addition.
And it doesn't have to go before the city commission?
It does not. The only reason it might is if you were to deny this application, then Kansas Wesleyan would have a right to appeal your decision to the city commission. But if you are favorable to the project, then your decision is the final decision. So I'd be open to any questions. Mr. Wren's the project architect, has much more knowledge about it and has much more interaction with the state of Kansas on the historic tax credit side. But we've done our best to characterize that the state's goal is to try to balance making new additions clearly look separate from the original, but also compatible. And so your job is to judge whether this design achieves that.
Could you laser point the addition on that proposed? So that's the old building.
Yeah.
And then the black trim, all of the black trim is the new. Is that correct?
So it may be a little bit difficult to see, but you'll see this kind of shadow here. I'll zoom in a little bit more. This brick, or rather the stone on the corner here, this is the existing exterior.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a vestibule kind of building on the back currently that's being removed, and in its place, Kansas Wesleyan is proposing this structure here that is south of the stone corner ornamental element here. And so what they've done is they preserve this stone element by bringing the building in kind of like a small alcove, and then it comes back out. So I'll bring up a site plan that shows that a little bit clearer. So this is the existing south edge of the building, and they're coming out. This is that cove that you see that differentiates the existing from the new, and then the new comes out and has similar characteristics to the existing building, but it uses a little bit different materials and a little bit different style while still trying to be compatible, if that makes sense. So this shaded portion here that you see is the proposed addition that would take the place of this vestibule structure that's being removed. And these are the elevation drawings that reflect that.
And the architect can confirm that, but as we understand it, the state of Kansas asked for the addition to be drawn in or pinched in slightly to preserve what Mr. Hers is describing there, so that that was still visible and not removed or blocked by the addition. And so that is what we mean about being a balance between preservation and then making it so that the addition is compatible with but distinguishable from the original. And so that is a judgment call for you to decide whether you think they've achieved that by making this compatible with but distinguishable from the original building. So any questions about the interior or how it would function or how it would relate to the interior of the existing building? Those are all things that the applicant would be in a better position to answer than staff.
Applicant.
So
Yeah.
if there are no questions from the commissioners to staff regarding our report or attachments, then we would ask for a representative, Kansas Wesleyan, either their architect or a representative, just to give you an overview from their perspective.
Good afternoon. I'm Charles Renz with Jones Gillum Renz Architects. So I'd be happy to address these issues or any questions that you have. We talked a little bit about the reveal. As this design and this project developed, it is a little different than what we started with probably originally when we met with the city back in August of last year, because it was shortly after that meeting that we became aware of the historic application, and all this started moving forward where we were working with a historic consultant. And so there were some changes that came up. One of them, you've talked a little bit about this, the reveal. Speaking to that, the initial design, we were always matching the width of the existing building as we came out, and we talked about how to best delineate that, and the reveal is what we came up with, where we were using a black brick in that area to distinguish that addition. Some of the original designs, it was a little bit more matching, where we had limestone cap, we had limestone banding, and some of those elements that where that element right there that pops out did match a little bit more. But with our discussions with the historic consultants and with the state, some questions that kind of went back and forth, those were some of the revisions that we made that everybody thought was a good compromise to delineate this addition. Some of the other things that you see is the wainscot trim band that you see on the existing is a limestone banding. In lieu of matching that, we went back with a black accent, or I'll say black, but a darker brick accent that is part of the blend of the brick. So it's a brick that is that's used in the main brick blend. And went back in with an accent again. Everybody felt like that was a nice compromise. Same thing with the corner accents that you see right there. Again, they were concerned with those elements, matching too close again. So all of those details that we talked about there were made to try to help delineate this addition from the original building. The stone wainscot that you see along the bottom area there, we've delineated that a little bit differently. What we're using there will be it'll be a precast stone, so instead of a natural limestone, it will have a little different texture, a little different profile. It'll be similar, but there will be some difference to that, and it's more of a cast concrete, cast colored concrete material rather than the stone, and that's similar with the accents that you see around the columns as well. Those are cast stone accents. Dean talked a little bit about just kind of the proportion of the addition and making sure that tied in. That's part of the rationale with the stair stepping of the addition, was to not make it feel like such a box structure that just popped out, but so that there's a little bit more of a, just a sense of scale of the building, and pulling out some of those building features, not just for character, but again, just for the overall scale. One of the reasons you see the main brick wall, that the first part of that addition before the rounded piece, is it's quite tall. Part of the reason is to conceal mechanical equipment that would be up there. We didn't want to make, right now mechanical equipment sits back on the opposite side on the ground. It's concealed by wood fence, but we don't want people driving by looking at condensing units and things like that sitting on the roof. So that's one of the reasons for that height, and then again kind of justifies the stair stepping of that addition. Some of the other exterior features that we recognized as being important and making sure that those are integrated into the design are the existing windows, specifically the existing stained glass windows that were identified as historic features on the outside of the building. So with the addition, there's a handful of those windows that we are removing, and then we are incorporating those into the design of the remainder of the facility. So from that view right there, just above the little addition that comes out, the little lean-to addition, you see there's the single windows, and then you see the two windows in the middle that have the three sections. Those are three sections of stained glass, kind of at the peak of the circle right there. Yes, those windows right there, and then the other windows next to that one to the west there. Yeah. So those are very nice stained glass window units, and those openings will be the entrance into Sam's Chapel from the upper level of this addition. So we are retaining all the stonework around those windows. And again, this comes from the recommendation of the historical consultant in the state, to make part of the interior of the building, to preserve that exterior and show some of that exterior part of the building from the inside of the addition. I think there's an interior rendering there that depicts that. That's the lower level. Now that at the lower level that you see right there, that's where the lean-to is removed. And we went in there and inspected the brick that is exposed over there, and it is no longer the original brick. So the historic consultant and everybody was on board that we could cover that we probably should cover that. And so as you go to the upper level, there you see the entrances into Sam's Chapel, and then the single window, the historic window. So those are the big openings right there. Those will be the entrance into Sam's. We'll have a pair of doors in there, and then the little bit of kind of restoration work that we'll have right there is there will be some brick repair down there, and of course we extend those window openings down to the ground so that we can pass through it. But then we're trimming out that with stone, but leaving all the lintel stone and all the side, all the ornate detailing of that stone. That will all be original, and that will be exposed. We actually hold the ceiling off the wall. You can see from that rendering that we kind of float the new ceiling up there out just a little bit, again, so that we can retain as much of that existing brick as we possibly can. And we actually have some lighting up above to kind of light that and try to make that a feature that that looks nice, and again, preserving
Where are the
that.
stained glass windows in that picture?
Okay, you see the single window on the side right there. That's an existing stained glass window that will remain. Oh, thank you, Dean. Yeah, thank you.
It doesn't look like stained glass.
That is stained glass.
Okay.
These are existing stained glass windows now that we are removing. And then those stained glass windows are being salvaged, and some of those units are being removed and located inside Sam's Chapel at the back wall of Sam's Chapel, so that from inside. So now, if you've been in there, you look at the side walls, you have the stained glass window around the perimeter. So there's a wall in the back of Sam's Chapel that we are reinstalling those stained glass elements into that wall, and then we're backlighting those, from an interior space, so that you'll have that similar glow, that you get from the exterior windows. So there's a unit that has the crest in it, and again, those will be moved into Sam's Chapel. There's a second design that's on kind of the two sides of that crested window. Those are being relocated to is there a picture of the west facade there, Dustin? It'd be exterior. Okay, right here. If you can look on that rendering. That is the old original fire exit. There was an old exterior, steel stair that was mounted on the side of the building right there. It is currently just filled with some brick and glass block, and we are relocating the two of the windows that are being removed into those areas as well. So with that, we are relocating all but two of the removed stained glass windows. We're relocating all but two of those. Those two will be salvaged. They'll be, they're salvaging. We don't have another place to reinstall them at this point, but we are saving them in the event that, hey, there is something that we can do with them. And again, that was worked through pretty meticulously with the historic consultant, and we wanted to use those, obviously. So that's, we have been, very sensitive to retaining those, some of those elements as much as we possibly could. Let's see. Again, as Dean said, the intent and the direction from the historic consultant in the state was to have an addition that ties in, that looks nice, but is clearly distinct from the original, from the original building. And so, as we said, I think this is a nice design, a nice look, and where we have been sensitive to those, to those features. So
it's a flat roof on the addition, and where's the downspouts?
They actually they are downspouts that go kind of tuck back into that reveal right there. So they're black downspouts, to tie that in. So yep, they all tie in. And then right now, if you're over there, not that it's maybe relevant to what we're doing, but or to what we're talking about, but water kind of comes off this area now, and it just spills out into the parking lot. We are out in this area doing some storm drain off of those, so that the water that does come down, we are able to collect and get that taken underground out to the storm sewer system.
And there'll be an elevator.
There is an elevator, correct? Interior, inside, again, we have retained the wood chairs. They're in there, and in there it's a lot of patching, some water damage, some of that stuff, but it's a lot of repair work. The stage, as you can see, is being extended. It's been extended one time, but it is now being extended out a little bit more. We lose a couple rows of seating. We've actually eliminated another row of seating kind of 2/3 of the way back in the space, so that we again can improve the access for people trying to get across from one side of the auditorium to the other. So there's a little intermediate aisleway there. The stage is distinct. That was another thing. The stage extension will be black. It will be distinct from the original.
No orchestra pit then either.
No orchestra pit, but actually we are talking the seating. We're looking at removable front rows as a possibility to where chairs can be removed. So in the case where that's needed, there's a possibility that chairs may be able to be removed. I'm happy to answer any other questions that you have. I just, kind of as a side note, the reveal that we talk about on the outside of the building is pretty similar to some of the detailing on the inside of the building that we did. So for instance, where there's an original wall, for instance, and we have maybe a new drywall partition or a soffit or something going up to that. We've gone to great detail to try to detail things so that we're not slamming new drywall into, an original wall and sealing that transition. We've detailed similar to that reveal on the outside, but reveals at the inside so that those new materials, those drywall, they stop short. There's a clear delineation right there to try to preserve and just kind of highlight those original components and be sensitive to that.
You referring to that illustration there, you said the darker brick around that wainscoting line, and then the edged corner. I think you originally had like a white to match the original building.
It was like stone. It's like a limestone.
But was it the state that said that matched too close?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are they afraid that people would think, oh, that was original?
Yeah. It was one of those things. Make it look good, but don't make it. Don't make it match. Let's clearly, delineate these items. Now, some of these were items that we modified before that original submittal. That as we took their direction and we knew that this was the route that we were going, that we made those changes. Some of those changes actually came about following their comments. So.
Okay. Yeah, as we pointed out, it's puts the architect in a little bit of a quandary in terms of the Secretary of Interior Standards number 9 says that new work will be differentiated from the old, but will be compatible with the historic materials, features, size, and scale and proportion to protect the integrity of the property. So the architect has to balance compatibility with differentiation, and again, that's part of your role in reviewing this today. Has the architect succeeded in making it compatible but differentiable between new and original?
Every question I had, you answered, so.
Yes.
Yes.
Hopefully I answered it right.
Yes.
So. Okay. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
So again, I'll refer you back to page 7 and 8 of your report. And on page 7, we have suggested our findings that we think support approval of a certificate of appropriateness for this project. And on page 8, we've indicated that if you are in agreement with those findings, that we would recommend that you attach 2 conditions to any approval of a certificate of appropriateness. And the first condition deals with preservation of the wood seats in Sam's Chapel to reinforce the state's comments. And secondly, that if for whatever reason there were to be significant design changes to what has been presented today, that those would be presented to staff and we would determine whether anything needed to come back to you. The second aspect of that, if you approve a certificate of appropriateness, would just to be a motion that states that you find the Kansas Wesleyan's project will not damage or destroy any character-defining features of Pioneer Hall. And in making that motion, you're just doing that on behalf of the State Historic Preservation Office, and that way we can communicate to them that you've reached that conclusion.
And then significant changes, that'll be determined by you and the Historic Commission?
Well, it'll be primarily determined by staff because those will be presented to us. And so that's consistent with what we do with the Downtown Design Review Board. We don't anticipate anything because of all the work that's been done by the architect to get to this point. But what we generally do is err on the side if we think it's a significant change, and we think that the board or commission would view it as a significant change, then we bring it back for review. If we think it's just a minor change, then we would just approve that change administratively. But we just, if anything were to change from what we presented, the idea is that what's being presented today is what we're going to issue a building permit on. And if midway through the project there was material that became unavailable or this changed or whatever, and well, we can't preserve any of these stained glass windows like we thought we could, then that might be something we would bring back to you. But just a minor deviation from the plans, that would be something we'd approve administratively. So it has to be pretty significant to be significant.
Public comment?
We need to.
I think so.
Is there anyone from the public who has comment or questions?
We do not have anyone online currently, so anyone from the public who's interested on speaking on the topic would be in the room.
I see no volunteers to speak. Do we have a motion?
I would make a motion for application CA 23-1 that we approve the certificate of appropriateness with the following conditions from the staff, conditions 1 and 2, listed on page 8 of the staff report.
Second.
So we do have a motion and a second for approval of certificate of appropriateness with conditions 1 and 2. So I will call for a vote on that motion. All in favor of approving option number 2, which is approval of a certificate of appropriateness for the project with 2 conditions, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries 4-0. And then on behalf of the State Historic Preservation Office, they would like you to consider making a separate motion under the state law review, which requires that a finding be made that this project will not damage or destroy any character-defining features of Pioneer Hall. So I would see if anybody would like to make a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second?
So we have a motion and a second to find that this project will not damage or destroy any character-defining features of Pioneer Hall. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so both, it's a single project, but you've conducted a review today on behalf of our local ordinance and also on behalf of the State Historic Preservation Office. So that would conclude our public hearing items for today, and we have no administrative business or preliminary discussion items. I would open it up to see if anyone, any commissioners have unfinished or other business they would like to bring up. We don't have any pending applications at this time, so we can't give you your next meeting date, but in many cases, we have special meetings like today when we have a project come in. So I would see if there's any comments or questions from commissioners under other business.
Any update on St. John's?
We have no updates on St. John's Hospital other than I believe I saw a small for sale sign on the property, but I'm not sure. But there was a sunflower redevelopment group out of Kansas City, Missouri that purchased it, and they sold it to a gentleman from Chapman, Kansas, who's the current owner, and I believe it's a bit more than he was capable of handling, and so he's realized that, and so I can't say for sure that it's officially on the market again, but it's probably not sustainable in its present condition, and they're not doing a great job of keeping it either secure or weather tight, so it's a little bit of a concern. But it
Can't be worth very much, is it?
well, the challenge has been, and the reason that the National Park Service didn't put it on the National Register is the National Park Service wanted all the modern additions to be removed and then to look at the original construction and make the determination based on that. And it is going to be really expensive undertaking to remove all the modern additions from that building. And so that and as Mr. Renz can probably attest to, the utilization of the tax rehabilitation or the rehabilitation tax credit, it's a pretty laborious, intensive process to utilize tax credits, and I don't believe that the current owner who owns the property is equipped to or has retained the kind of professional assistance that you would need to utilize tax credits to do a project there. So we're just kind of in a holding pattern on St. John's. So I would, if there are no other comments, I'd ask Ms. Seibel to see if there's anyone who wants to speak at public forum.
Do we have anybody who would like to speak?
We still do not have anyone from the public on Zoom.
So if there's no public forum speakers, then the chair can entertain a motion from a member to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to adjourn in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thanks, everybody.